Hi, Miss King here, and in this screencast we're going to look at homeostasis. You might remember from biology, homeostasis is a process where your body may have some kind of change occur inside or outside, but you have to maintain the same state of being. Your body has to stay the same no matter what change occurs. Can you think of a situation where your body might need to adjust to stay the same? One that comes to mind in particular for me is the weather. Right now it's hot outside. If I stay inside, my body temperature will remain fairly constant. However, it's about 98 degrees outside right now. So if I go outside, well, that's really hot. So my body temperature is going to start rising, and that's not a good thing. So what's going to happen is my body will produce sweat, and that sweat will help cool me back down to a normal constant temperature. And that's what we would call homeostasis. Even though the temperature outside changed and was too hot, my body was able to stay the same constant temperature. Now, most of these homeostasis processes, they happen what we call autonomically, which means that you don't have any control over it. It's going to happen automatically whether you're aware of it or not. The body has the ability to monitor and make these adjustments by using pathways that we call feedback mechanisms. Feedback mechanisms have three components, and we're going to look at each one of those components individually. The first component is called a receptor. This is the part of your body that will receive the stimulus. It literally monitors for any kind of changes that might occur. Those changes, again, they can be inside your body or outside your body. The second part of a feedback mechanism is called an integration center, or sometimes called a control center. This part is going to interpret the stimulus and come up with some kind of response that will help reestablish homeostasis. And then the third part is called the effector, and the effector is actually going to carry out some kind of response to whatever the change is. And this will help get us back to homeostasis. Let's take a look using a diagram at what each one of these things might look like in an example. All right, so we have a diagram here that shows balance to begin with. And let's go ahead and label on the diagram the three parts of our feedback mechanism. Right here we have our receptor. Get my pen to work. There we go. All right, and then this part is the control center or the integration center. And then this part is what we call the effector. Okay, so right here I'm going to put number 1. And you can see that our variable here is at homeostasis, it's balanced. But something's going to come along and there's going to be a change, and that's going to cause homeostasis to go out of balance. So this is our stimulus. And we know that the stimulus means a change. And then the second thing, our receptor, we'll put number 2. Our receptor will detect this change. Whatever it might be. All right, now the receptor is going to send a signal to the control center, and this is what we call, we'll put number 3, the afferent pathway. Okay, so this is what we call input. All right, so the receptor is sending a signal to the control center, which is the brain. All right, and then the brain is sort of interpreting what our signal is and what needs to happen. And then the next thing that's going to happen is our efferent pathway, or what we will call output. Okay, so the brain is going to send a signal to the effector to carry out some kind of response. And so we'll put number 5 right here. This is where our response is carried out. Okay, now let's look at an example. Okay, so let's say our stimulus, let's use, it's the flu. Okay, you catch the flu, you get sick. All right, so what's going to happen is there are some receptors inside your body that will detect that something has changed, that you have the flu virus. Okay, so this is our immune system. It's going to detect this change. It detects the flu virus. So these receptors are going to send a signal to the brain to tell the brain, signal to tell brain about the virus. Okay, and then the brain is going to interpret that signal, and it's going to decide, I think we need to send some white blood cells and some antibodies to fight this disease. Okay, so it makes the decision about what to do. So we're going to do some white blood cells and some antibodies to fight the disease. Okay, and so that's what's happening here on our efferent pathway. Our white blood cells and antibodies receive the message from the brain. And then what's going to happen down here is that once it receives those, the message from the brain, our white blood cells and our antibodies will fight the disease. And then our body should eventually go back to homeostasis once that flu virus has been killed. Now, there are 2 different types of feedback loops. The first type of feedback mechanism is called negative feedback. So this would be any kind of feedback mechanism that's going to cause some kind of reversal to a process. The reversal or the reduction that occurs is going to take us back to homeostasis. All right, now, so what does that mean? Let's take, for example, temperature regulation. That was the first example that I gave you, where it's too hot outside, so my body temperature rose. To respond to that rise in body temperature, I sweat, and that takes my temperature back to normal. So that would be a negative feedback mechanism. What we're doing is reversing whatever happened because of the change. My body got too hot, so we needed to reverse it and take it back to normal. So that would be negative feedback. Blood glucose level is another good example for negative feedback. When you eat a lot of sugary foods, that causes the blood to gain a lot of sugar, and that makes your blood very acidic. So that's a bad thing. So we don't want too much sugar in our blood. So your body will respond to that blood sugar by releasing insulin. And insulin will reduce the amount of sugar in your blood. So this is a reduction, and that will take your blood glucose level back to the normal homeostatic state. The second type of feedback mechanism is positive feedback. And in this type of feedback mechanism, your system is actually going to increase or amplify the response. Now, a good example is childbirth. Positive feedback mechanism that occurs during childbirth. Let's say the baby is ready to come out, so the uterus begins to contract. Well, those contractions send a stimulus to the brain, and then the brain says, we want to continue these contractions more and more and more. So they're sending the response to the effector to contract that uterus more and more and more, so we're amplifying the response. And the more we have those contractions, the more the baby can get pushed out of the uterus. Blood clotting is another good example of positive feedback. If you get a cut, your body has to respond by bringing platelets to cover up the hole. If you don't cover up the hole, you could bleed to death. Okay, so what's going to happen is when you have that cut, a signal gets sent to your brain, hey, there's a cut here, we're bleeding out. So your brain sends a signal to these platelets to go and cover up the hole. And so the platelets slowly begin accumulating over the cut, and the more platelets that come and cover the cut, the more that will be brought in. So it's amplifying the response to bring more and more and more of those platelets to the cut to cover the hole until it is completely covered. And that's it. That's feedback mechanisms. These are the two types of feedback mechanisms. And the feedback mechanism is how we maintain our homeostasis.